Welcome to Girl Dad, the podcast. I'm your host, Madeline Anderson, and I'm thrilled to bring you honest conversations with dads and daughters, sharing heartfelt stories, actionable advice, and real daughter perspectives that will help you be the best girl dad you can be. Mike Whitaker, or Whit, welcome to Girl Dad, the podcast.
Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here with you and your audience today, Madeline.
I'm so excited to have you, Whit. Thank you for coming on. And we're going to have a really interesting conversation today. I already know it, on a very hot topic. But before we dive into that, I would love for you to please introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you do, and a bit about your family.
Sure. So I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son, so a ninth grader and a sixth grader. I live in Boulder, Colorado. By day, I lead strategy and innovation at an international consulting firm, about 10,000 people, and have been very active in us navigating the AI transition over the last several years. And then by night recently, I've been very active with trying to help parents navigate the AI transitions themselves. So feel more empowered to shape the impact AI will have on our work, our kids, and ourselves. And also working with local school boards, educators, the parent community to try to have the AI conversations that our kids need us to have right now at this really critical transition time. And then I think what we'll talk about today goes beyond AI, but that's kind of my passion project, not my day job, but it's something I could talk about all day and would love to talk to your audience about.
Absolutely. And I know that'll be probably the bulk of the conversation because I think that, I have so many questions there and I'm not even a parent yet. I can't even imagine being a parent right now and trying to navigate this space. And so we're going to try to get as many of those questions answered today. But I do want to start off by talking a little bit about your book. You wrote Family Throughlines, and I would love for you to talk about what inspired you to write it. And then also for anyone who hasn't read the book, how you would define a family through line and really why that is applicable for girl dads.
I think the origin story is actually quite simple. There was a week as a parent where I ran out of answers. My daughter came to me on Monday at dinner. This was back in September. And made a frustratingly logical case for why she needed Snapchat to stay in the loop socially at school, something that my wife and I wished would have waited longer and didn't really want to go into, but we couldn't ignore the way she came to us and the case she made. On Tuesday, I was testifying to my local school board on the need for our schools to both prepare our kids for an AI future where those skills will be expected in the workforce and also protect their development in the process to avoid cognitive offloading and some of the more insidious effects of over-reliance on the technology, but not banning it. And so trying to find that middle ground that would both prepare and protect our kids. On Wednesday, I went and testified at the state school board on a similar topic and talked to the chief academic officer. And then on Thursday, both my kids' schools went into lockdown. And both separately at middle school and high school, 3 hours hiding in the corner, afraid that at any moment somebody with a gun was going to come through the door. The sign of safety was a heavily armed police officer coming through the door to tell them they were okay after no communication, or the communication they got over the 3-hour period was text messages with rumors and falsehoods and other things. And so then I had to help them recover from that trauma, which they both called the worst day of their life and one that had lingering effects afterwards. And that week that combined in a 4-day period, social connection via app, AI, trauma from something that I can barely fathom because it didn't exist when I was growing up, made me realize that that's a common pattern for parents right now, is that the challenges our kids are facing are largely things that simply didn't exist when we were kids. And so nobody ever taught us how to talk about them. We didn't get taught by our schools. We didn't get taught by our parents, not because they were derelict in their duty to prepare us, but because the issues didn't exist. And so one of the big challenges of modern parenthood is, how do you show up when you're not an expert? Because it's not possible to be an expert in all these things. And you don't always have time to listen to a podcast or to go read a book when your kid needs you. And so then that's the origin of Family Throughlines, was, how do I connect my parenting across all these diverse topics so that I can show up with more confidence when I'm not an expert and show up with some consistency in a way that starts to feel familiar and predictable to my kid so that they feel like there is a through line that holds my parenting together, even as we're facing all these unpredictable issues of a disrupted world together as a family. And then ultimately, how does that help my child build a compass that they'll carry with them to navigate the challenges that we don't yet know will come and that they'll navigate when they're not by my side?
Hmm. So important what you're doing. This is immense. And I think one thing that I really like about the way that you've structured the book and the way that you structure life, really. I mean, from what I know about you, you are very organized and you take big topics and you break them down into applicable concepts and frameworks. And I think that's really helpful. So, when it comes to AI, you do the same thing. You have a great framework for navigating AI. And I think that this is one of those major challenges that you described where there's parents confused about what they should teach, what they should teach to avoid, how they should help their children just navigate the world of AI. So I would love for you to kind of break down that amazing framework and the waypoints that you have for thinking about AI and how parents can direct their children in that manner.
So I'll get to the waypoints. Actually, before I get there, you touched on a couple things that are foundational to the family through line framework that I want your listeners
Yes.
to understand, because
Yes.
I think they feed into the approach to AI, but they also go into other topics. And so one of the things you said was about breaking down things into solvable components or into smaller parts. And there's a part of family through lines, which is, as parents, what are your core principles for how you want to show up to solve things with your kids? And that's not like it's not honesty. It's not kindness. It's like, how do I want to show up as a solver? And how do I want to show up with my partner and do it consistently? And, those can be things like we have one, which is we want our kids to do the right thing when no one's watching, which means we can't default to surveillance, right? Like, and that then dictates a lot of how we navigate around tech. We have to not use that as the first pathway. But one of our core principles is make it bigger or make it smaller, which is we never accept being stuck with the situation as given. We either try to abstract it into a bigger concept or lesson that we can point to that guides our way through it, or we break it down really fine into something that feels solvable and able to advance. And so that a lot of what I've done around AI and some of these topics goes back to that make it bigger, make it smaller pillar so that we can create movement when we might otherwise feel stuck or paralyzed. So that's a big one. And when we're making it bigger, one of the things that we talk about a lot with our through lines is, and it's in the book, is timeless lessons. So as parents across all these diverse issues, what are the 3 to 5 things that you're going to come back to over and over again that are the
Mm.
lessons that you want your kids to carry forward with them? So it doesn't feel like how you're solving or how you're addressing the problem, you're making it up on the spot or it's reactionary, but it's more predictable and grounded for your kids and it's from a stable foundation. So, we have things like one of our timeless lessons is recognize manipulation, which we may talk about more later. But in an algorithmic driven world where the forces are trying to pull on your strings in all times, it could be a human salesman, it could be an algorithm. We want our kids to know when their strings are being pulled. They may still
Mhm.
choose to do the thing that they're being pulled to do, but we can pull a conversation about AI and ground it in, okay, well, what's the manipulation here? Let's recognize that. How are we going to address that going forward? And so I think having the point of the Through Lines book in the first place is to have a handful of, the proven plays, your core principles, your timeless lessons that you can come back to over and over again across these hard conversations so that they start to feel familiar to your kids.
Mhm.
And then you get into these territories like AI where it's not familiar for you, but you at least as a family have a grounding that feels familiar even in a wildly unfamiliar space. So I wanted to momentarily touch on that before the waypoints because I think it's important for the
Yeah.
path.
No, I'm so glad that you did. I think that that set up the conversation so nicely. And on that note, I think it's really important that families come together and really think about these things because it's really easy to just let life go by and, let days happen to you, but you really have to carve out time to plan and prepare your family And the way that you think about this and this concept of through lines is a really great idea for a starting place. Having this code or these family through lines can really help create stability and a sense of security and direction for your family. I mean, you talked about the compass. Well, Girl Dad Network is all about, dads being their daughter's North Star. And I think it's the same thing here. It's like the more clarity you can have around the direction you want to take the family and how to navigate different situations and how to parent in different situations and how kids should react in different situations, it just helps set them up so much for being capable adults and humans. So, yeah, anyways, I'm just a big fan of what you're doing and how you're thinking about it. And I'm excited to now dive into the waypoints of AI with
Yeah.
that context in place.
The beauty of your no shortcuts, and I'll say this, and this is something for other newer parents, is some of the through lines you can start to, like, we started to introduce some of them at 18 months old. And we weren't necessarily naming them at that point, and maybe hadn't gone through the intentionality that we've done a little bit later in life. But your kids will recognize them later, even if you don't
Mm-hmm.
know exactly. Like, your no shortcuts, even if it's just when they're walking on the street. Hey, we don't take a shortcut; we go to the corner. Like, when you need to pull on that when they're 14 years old and you're trying to get them to do the hard work at school so that they don't shortcut their learning, it's deep. It's in there that you can pull
Mm-hmm.
on. So to the waypoints on the AI, so we'll make that transition. So here's what's hard about the AI space. Parents in general would like to be able to draw a map for their kids of the path and how to get, kind of navigate the world and get through their future, right? Like, the map ideally would have, here's the destination you're going towards to have a good childhood, to be successful as an adult. Here's some paths you could follow. Here's where the dragons lie and the risks, and, like, don't go over there. And the reality is it's not possible to draw a map for a world that changes week by week. And that's what's happening in the AI space. Like, the terrain is so disrupted that you can't actually lay out a map with any confidence that tells them exactly where they need to go and gives them that line of sight over any period of time. What you can do is you can give them navigational markers that help them make decisions about how to navigate the terrain even as it continues to change. And that's what waypoints really are.
Mm-hmm.
They're like easy to remember, foundational grounding things that help you navigate in a space that is unfamiliar or feels risky or you're unsure of what to do. And so for AI, I've got 4 for my family. One is own the start, own the finish. So whenever you're using AI, you're setting the direction and you're ultimately responsible for the quality of the output and to have full knowledge of what was done during the project so that you could explain it to somebody else, talk about it, you'd stand proudly by it, that it feels like your work. AI is a middle to middle technology, not one where you're just handing over the keys and saying, go complete the end product and I'm absolving myself of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of room within that for how you use it, for where you choose to put your time, for how much or how little you use AI. But the own the start, own the pillars, or own the finish pillars help to kind of bound that. So that's one. 2 is keep doing hard things. So, it's well known that productive struggle or just the general active struggle is critical to learning and development. You want to ensure that you're not using AI to get rid of all hard work, not using it just because you don't feel like doing the work. What AI, when used well, does is it changes where your effort is applied. So
Mm-hmm.
you as the human start to put more of your time and effort into the parts that you want to own, that you feel like you have the judgment and expertise in, the things that you really want to develop and learn yourself. And perhaps you're using AI, at a younger kid level, maybe it's creating and formatting slides because the goal of the assignment was for you to gain the knowledge and to be able to orally present in class in a way that's compelling for the other students, and you can convey the lesson and demonstrate knowledge. The class isn't about designing PowerPoint slides. And so you're
Right.
using AI to, you could convey information in a different way. I did it with a networking thing this last summer where instead of giving a bio to the group, I created a rap song that had lyrics about my experience and why I was part of the group, set to a gritty rap sound similar to, it was like Wolves by Post Malone was the inspiration for the song. So I used and it was fun. I expressed myself
Hmm.
in a different way. There's plenty of work to get there, but
Right.
it changed where my work applied. The third one is outsource with intent. So it's every time you use AI, you're getting value back and you're giving something up. And is that a positive trade off? And do you know what you're giving up? And I've actually just last week for my kids built a free browser extension that when they type in a AI chatbot, it pops up 4 questions and they're sequential. And it's like, what are you trying to do? What work are you doing? What do you already have? An outline, an idea, a thesis. What do you want? What help do you want from AI? And what do you want to keep for yourself? And then at the end of that, it creates a prompt for the AI that sets the boundaries for the session to make sure that it asks for the pre-existing work and thinking first, that it doesn't do the things that my kid wants to keep for themselves, that it focuses on the type of help that they want, just to try to help them think before the AI thinks for them. And that's my way of trying to help them outsource with intent to AI
Hmm.
as opposed to just getting swept up in a conversation around it. And then the fourth one is preserve human only spaces. So in a noisy world with AI really available almost anywhere, how making sure that you're preserving some time, some space for you and your own thoughts that aren't manipulated by technology. And even that, it could be as simple as a dog walk where you don't even take headphones and you're not listening to a podcast or music, but you're just walking and listening and in your own space. And so those are my four. And there's obviously a lot of room around those, but I found even as stuff has radically changed over the last 9 months, those have remained highly relevant.
Yeah, I would say so. When it comes to number three, I was just thinking about, everyone teaches that the quality of your output is based on the quality of your prompt and your input. And I think that's a really important thing to remember because your children, when they're using AI for different assignments or for personal uses, you know, if they are directing the prompt in a way that protects them, like the way that you set it up, like what do you want to keep for yourself? I think that's a really interesting question that I've never heard asked before. That allows the answer or the AI's output to be more protective of your children's understanding or what they want to hold on themselves and what they want to handle, and the future of work, there's going to be a lot more AI integrated, right? And so the more that they can get used to um, being really intentional about the prompts, I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, I want to be clear with your audience. I'm not anti AI in any way. I use it every day at work. It's going to be the expectation going forward.
Hmm.
I think there's a few things that you still need to be a master of a subject in the world of AI, even as stuff is cheap, intelligence is widely and
Hmm.
cheaply available. Knowing something deeply, caring about a space deeply allows you to shape the way AI impacts that space and the way you use it. If you don't really know a space, your questions and your directions are going to be more surface level. If you really start to know it, you get a lot more value. Ask AI a fifth grade question, get a fifth grade answer.
Exactly.
Ask a graduate level question and you get a graduate level answer. And so part of this, as we're shaping with our kids here and trying to get them to own the start is, don't go to AI and say, I need help with my history essay.
Yeah.
Say, I'm working on an essay on this. My thesis is this. Here's the arguments I'm trying to make. I need help with some counter arguments or with some research, or I need you to test my thinking and my rationale. I don't want you to write my introduction or my essay. I'm going to write that
Hmm.
myself, but I want you to help, and you start to get to that and they start to think in that pattern. Then they feel more like they're controlling and they're
Right.
dictating as opposed to they're getting swept along and are at the mercy of the technology and wherever it takes them.
Yeah. And I think that this is a perfect segue to a Substack post that you posted recently that is so fascinating. You mentioned you were talking to some students about this dilemma that children are facing where they can use AI for different assignments, different essays, and they feel like they need to then take that output and dumb it down so they don't, quote unquote, get in trouble or feel like they're cheating. I would love to hear your thoughts on where you think we should go with this, and, how teachers can help teach children how to feel proud about what they do without it just being from AI. Like, I understand the dilemma, but obviously dumbing down your work is not the right answer either. So, yeah,
There,
take it away.
there are so many elements of this,
I
and
know.
and we'll talk about this. So, I'll tell the story to your audience because I think it's very real and it's very recent. I was at the Freya Sky concert with my daughter, doing the girl dad thing of taking her to the Disney Star concert with two of her friends. And we were in line waiting for the doors to open, and the conversation turned to AI because I poke at that occasionally. And I expected to get the general 15-year-old kind of shrug or not to have an opinion on it. And, one of my daughter's friends was she's a very smart, very intelligent girl, and she spent probably, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes, call it unburdening, where she felt like she had a space to actually talk about what was going on with her AI use for the first,
Mhm.
like really kind of for the first time. And it's no indictment on like parents or teachers. It's just there aren't a lot of spaces where you can get into a nuanced discussion and you have the time and the space and all of that. Um, and so what I heard from her was, when I put C in the chat bar, like the first thing, or in the search bar, the first thing that comes up is ChatGPT. So I go there and I think I'm using it well, but I'm not sure. When I use it, I worry that it's hurting my thinking and my development, but I feel like I have to use it to keep up with the rest of the kids and my workload. And it was this like underlying sense of guilt
Mhm.
and emotional weight that, and, not clear on what's okay and what's not okay. And, to your audience, I'll go on to more of the lessons on the dumbing down, but to your audience, like ask your kids what their experience was with AI is with AI.
Mm.
You don't have to tell them what the experience is. You don't have to give them guardrails. Just ask what their current reality is. Are they, how are they using it? What are they hearing from teachers? What are they hearing from their friends? I've asked around this, and this is where we really learned about the dumbing down thing. And it actually came up again at the concert from another one of her friends that was in the line. Like I've had multiple, particularly girls in the community, say, I'm taking big words out of my essays. I'm changing my writing style. I'm introducing errors in the essay so that it's not too perfect. Not because they're using AI, because they don't want to get accused of using AI. And they feel like
Mm.
they'll be unable to defend themselves, or they're going to be under suspicion from teachers around the use. And there's been some in their group that have been accused and given zeros on assignments and will claim that they didn't use any AI and just, kind of stuck in this nasty cycle. And what's ultimately happening is that they're stifling their voices and limiting their
Mhm.
capabilities because of this culture of uncertainty and fear. And so when I've talked to my daughter about it and we talked to her, it's like, do not stifle your voice. Write to your full capabilities. Be honest with us, and we will defend you, and we'll show up for you if it becomes an issue. But we don't want this quiet questioning and undermining, and it's heartbreaking. And
Yeah.
it's not the fault of any one person, whether that's the school or the educator or families or anything else. Everybody's trying the best they can. It's just such an rapidly evolving space where the lines are shifting all the time and there's a lack of clarity, that the natural reaction for kids is to adapt defensively and say,
Mhm.
like, I'm going to come at this not in a way that feels empowering and where I'm preparing myself for the future, but to avoid getting in trouble and making a mistake. And it's so much more complicated than don't use ChatGPT to cheat, right? Like
Yeah.
that, like it's just a far more complicated space than that. And so a lot of what I'm encouraging parents to do is just, whether it's over dinner, whether it's in a car ride, just start the conversation with your kid in a way that lets you start to discover their reality. This is not just for teenagers. I'm going to tell everybody, like, there was an article in, I think it was NBC News, which was titled, How College Students Are Using AI to Avoid Being Accused of Using AI. And they're taking the things that they produce themselves and they're putting it through humanizers that are meant to avoid AI detectors to check their writing to see what might flag. And there's an equity issue here. It definitely flags English as a second language learners more than it does native speakers because writing is pattern based. And the more you write according to the patterns, the more likely an AI detector is to flag your writing. And so there's just this nasty cycle right now that I think like parents just have to be aware that it's
Mhm.
happening, that your kids are navigating it often largely feeling alone because they don't have peers to lean on. Their peers are figuring it out too. Their teachers are figuring it out. They're doing the best they can, but they're figuring it out. Most parents are still figuring it out. They don't have strong opinions. And so they're kind of silently suffering from the weight.
Mhm.
And it's an area that I think the parents listening to your podcast, I hope, if you do nothing else from this show, like, yes, I have a book. Yes, it's fun if people buy the book, like, whatever. Like, the thing I care about more is that you have a conversation with your child around
Right.
their AI use and what their reality is, and start to understand that so that they feel like they've got support as they navigate this space.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. I think when it comes to this situation or this issue that we're talking about, it really comes down to good intentions on both sides, right? Like the teachers and the educators and the schools, like you mentioned, they want to protect the children. They want to keep them thinking for themselves and build their writing skills without just taking the shortcut in life, right? To just fully using AI. But it is weighing on them in different ways, and there are negative repercussions from it. And then same thing with the children, like, a lot of them have good intentions with this, but now there's these negative repercussions from them needing to dumb down their essays or fearing AI, and I think that there is a lot of fear around AI right now. People are saying it's gonna take over the world, that there are AI websites that are where the AIs are talking to each other and talking about how they need to make their own language so that
Yeah.
humans can't, it's, like, freaky a lot of the times, and yeah, there is a lot of fear around it, and I think that what's happening in most cases is because of this fear and this unknown and the fact that the parents did not experience this themselves when they were growing up, the answer tends to be do nothing, right? Like, "Oh, well, I don't really understand it. Let me be hands off about it." And again, that has good intentions. Like everything that's going on in this space is well intended, but the repercussions are there. And so I think I totally agree with your one takeaway. It's talk to your children about AI and how they're using it. And even just being their sounding board, like you said, I mean, you were able to validate your daughter's friend's emotions and all of this weight that she was carrying just by letting her speak out about it rather than feel like it needs to be some secret thing that she's holding on to and this guilt that's just eating her alive for no reason. I mean, it's totally sad. And I think that this is way more common than we even expect. Um, so I think that's extremely important. Number one, talk to your children. And then the other thing that I wanted to really highlight is your number four, which is protect human spaces. This, I think, is one of the best antidotes to AI overwhelm or technology in general, social media, a lot of the problems that come with it, especially for teenage girls and young girls. The more that they can spend time outside in nature or with friends without technology, like kicking a soccer ball or playing a sport, being outside, catching butterflies, you know, yeah, what like just playing outside. Those moments create a force field around your child that protects them from social media's pull and this desire to be always online and in this digital world um and I think it just really grounds them into what life is and what we're all having this human experience on earth, and that's incredible, and we should remember that and enjoy our time away from technology and then use it in ways that help our lives improve and allow us to do more time outside with family, with humans. But I think that just putting a bigger emphasis as a family on like life and time with humans and time in nature helps prevent some of these feelings and issues that come naturally with technology overload.
Yeah, there's a couple things from family through lines that I think matter to kind of like what you're saying here in the conversation. Like one on the conversations with your kids. It's important for listeners to understand, like, you're not having one type of conversation with your kid. There's at least 5 types, right? Like
Mhm.
there's discovery, where you're just understanding the reality. There's connection, where you're building empathy. Triage, you're solving a problem. Strategizing, you're trying to come up with options to move forward. And then agreement, you're trying to agree on the path and what your plan is. Around AI, like, parents should really be spending a lot of time right now in discovery and connection. Like,
Mm.
you don't have to solve this for your kid. It's not about telling them exactly what they can or can't do. It's about understanding really at a deeper level what their reality is and the things that they're weighing and what they're going through. And I will tell you, like, if you do this well, you will get some special moments with your kids. I've seen my kids have light bulb moments where they were confused about a topic in class because they missed the day because they had another event, or they just didn't get it because the way the teacher explained it and their notes weren't something that when they got back to it at the end of the day, they were like, "Oh, like, I don't really understand this." And then I watched them, you know, interact with an AI to ask it to re-explain the foundational concepts here in a new way and have a legit moment where they went from overwhelmed and confused to like beaming and confident because they felt like they had that agency and they were able to solve a gap in their learning that otherwise would have stayed with them through the rest of the year. And they didn't have to go figure out how to leave another class to go talk to the teacher or do it instead of their other activities. They were able to do it in the moment. Um, and that's like where, as a parent, I think it's just so powerful if your kid feels like they can talk to you about this stuff, they can say
Mhm.
what's going on, you can help them ideate ways forward. It's not about coming with authority. It's about starting with curiosity here and just understanding that. Um, the other thing that you mentioned, and this is around the preserving human only spaces. It's in the conversation non-negotiable section of the book, but it's about being able to speak the tension. So, these things we're talking about with our kids, and one of them is like that pull of technology versus the real world, right? And maintaining presence, and how much time are you spending in your device, and either physical time or at least your mental attention there versus with the people around you in the real world. Like that's a hard issue and a hard conversation because there's a real tension, right? Like if these topics wouldn't be hard if there weren't real pulls in both directions.
Right.
Yes, your kid wants to know what's going on at school. They want to know what their friends are talking about. They're feeling like social connections are being made through the device in their pocket. And if they're off of it, they're going to miss some inside joke or something that then they're out of the loop the next day. Whereas parents are wanting them to be where they are, to wherever your feet are, wherever your mind is, be present there, be with the other humans, spend the time with the friends. And if the conversation is approached of, I want you to spend less time on technology and on screens, and the kid's like, but that's where my social life is, then that pits the parent and the kid against each other. If you can speak the tension and say out loud what it is that is hard, that we acknowledge and we know your reality is that so much of your social connection is through a device, as much as we prefer it wasn't. We also want to, it's really important to us that your brain is not overloaded with that you have experiences in the physical world, that you are present, that when you're with friends, you're with them, you're really with them and not halfway pulled into your phone. Like, if you can articulate things like that, then it becomes you and your kid. Like, how do we solve this tension? Like, what's the
Mhm.
path that allows us to address this and find something that works for both of us, as opposed to like, I want more screen time. I'd rather you spend less time on screens, which is I'm sure every parent listening to this has gotten into that dynamic with their kids, which, we have as well. And we find over and over again, if we can articulate the tension, then we can frame it as, hey kid, it's you and me against this tension. It's not your fault. It's not our fault. It's something that broader society, make it bigger.
Mhm.
It's a broader societal trend. It's something everybody is struggling with. We're not willing to just surrender to it and give up. We're going to try to find a path that works for our family that navigates this tension. It's a different conversation because you're then
Mhm.
solving that together. And that's what we did with our daughter around Snapchat and the social connection. And we really learned a lot from navigating that with her.
Yeah, and I think that allowing these kinds of conversations to happen and giving space for your kids to come to you about how they're thinking and feeling around things like AI or other challenges. This translates to all kinds of things, especially if you start these conversations younger as your children grow up and they're teenagers and they start dating and there's other dynamics happening in the social space. They will come to you because you've created this opportunity for openness and for speaking the tension. I think that's a great thing that again applies to any kinds of conversations, right? And can save a lot of blame or further tension because you kind of just named what's going on and you released emotions. Yeah, I think that's really important to call out that this is something that applies to a lot of different scenarios in the future. So, a really good practice to start with the family.
The other non-negotiable that I think really consistently applies is start with a shared reality. You know, we may think as parents that we understand the dynamic and what's going on with these technologies, these devices, these emotions. Usually we don't. Like we're guessing or we're projecting or we're demonstrating our own fears and classic around Snapchat and the social connection. When my daughter brought that, part of what we did to establish a shared reality is I asked her to listen to a podcast, and I said, I want you to listen to this podcast. It's an interview with Jonathan Haidt. It talks about the impacts of social media and screens, particularly on teenage girls. And it's not that we're shutting down this conversation. It's that I want you to understand at a deeper level what your mom and I are worried about so that we can have a real conversation about it. And it was an hour and a half podcast. It took her 3 months to listen to, but eventually she came back and she had listened to it and she had actually done her own research using ChatGPT to understand more about what parents might be worried about social media and Snap. She actually sent us an article from the New York Times, an opinion article that made the case for why Snapchat was the best social media platform to start a kid with because it had less of the perfection filters of other platforms. It was more raw. So that she was, and there was almost used like texting in a lot of ways. And that, her teams and others were on it as a communication platform. And so we read that and we had a conversation around it. And the tension we spoke was, look, we understand that this is a core part of how the social world works for you at school. And I had a dinner conversation with her where, she had talked about people get invited to parties. I was like, is it really about that? You're going to hear about a party if a party's happening. And she's like, no, it's like how people flirt. It's the start because you add somebody on Snap and if they add you back, then it's enough of an opening that you can go talk to them in real life. And I
Mhm.
was like, okay, I hear that. Like I hear that that's important to you and that's a real part of your world and the world that I grew up in where it was like go ask for a number or go talk to somebody. That's not really the way it works. And as much as I wish it would still work that way, that's not your reality. So I'm going to
Mhm.
have to meet you with your reality where it is. And, ultimately she ended up writing up an agreement for how she thought it would be okay to use Snapchat in this kind of like learning year. We take a year to teach kids how to drive, right? With a power-filled technology. We don't usually do that with social media where we start slow. We give them one platform. The parents are alongside. We're doing regular check-ins. We're doing limits. We expand it over time. And so we decided to take that approach with Snapchat. Like this is your learner's permit for social media. Like, this is the one you've said is most important. Let's do this in a more structured way. We'll have regular conversations. And I'll tell you, be honest with the audience, like there's been bumps. Like I'm not going to pretend that it's all smooth and we've got it all figured out, but we're talking about it and it's in the open and it's not transparent and it's not a fight. Um, it's just something where we're trying to navigate a hard space together. And she met her first boyfriend because he added her on Snap and she added him back. And then they talked in real life and he asked her out and he's a wonderful kid, like respectful, awesome kid. And I couldn't be happier for her. And it probably wouldn't have happened if we hadn't listened and figured out what her reality was and tried to find a way to meet her there.
Right. Yeah, I love this approach of having a shared reality first and just kind of getting on the same page, understanding each other's perspectives. And when it comes to social media and AI and all these worries that parents have, and the intentions of protecting their children, I think that giving examples like the podcast that you sent your daughter is really healthy for them to understand where you're coming from. And actually, I think, and we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, just understanding when you're being fooled or manipulated, right? I think that the more kids understand that element, the more unattractive some of those things become. And it gives them more power and autonomy to say, hey, actually, I see what you're doing here and I don't like it. And I've noticed that even with social media and you see these algorithms and it's like, I know what you're trying to do here and I don't appreciate
Yeah.
it, And so, but I think it gives the kids more power. And once they see that and are exposed to that other lens, it shifts the ball to be in their court instead of being just another number or another figure, on a platform that is designed to take your time, energy, and money.
Yeah, there's when I talk to parents, there's three AI conversations that I think every parent should be having with their kids this year. One is around AI as a study buddy, everything we've talked about, the waypoints, the don't dumb down your work, the understanding the emotional weight they might be bearing and the guilt and just digging into that. The second one is your friend is an algorithm. And this is the increasing use of AI as a companion. And 42% of teenagers have used AI for mental health support. 1 in 9 teenagers have said something to AI that they've said to no other human and prefer speaking to the AI over another human. And is that number 1 in 5 or 1 in 20 in your community? I don't know. It's all stats, but it's not zero. It's much bigger than
Mhm.
zero. Very real thing now. And like, how do you keep humans in the loop and make sure that they don't spiral into that dependence? But the third one, and this is what you're talking about the manipulation, is seeing is no longer believing. So when a lot of your audience grew up, me included, if you heard something on audio or you saw it on video, it was real. Like that was the ultimate fact that something had happened. Our kids are growing into a world where that is no longer true. Any piece of video or audio can be manipulated. It can be created from scratch. And so you have to, the challenge for girl dads and others, at parents of all, is how do you raise a smartly skeptical kid?
Mm.
Not cynical,
Right.
smartly skeptical. And so the thing I talk to my kids about, and I will tell you, they will not be able to say back exactly these words, but I hope that they take the concepts. The acronym's pause, and it's meant both ways of like, I want you to pause before you react or send something on, but also pause is the parts of it, which P is provenance. What's the source? Where did it come from? A is agenda. What is it trying to make me do or feel? U is unusual. Is there anything that sounds or looks weird that might indicate that it's manipulated? Just a little off. Just trust your spidey sense. S is search. If you're unsure, reverse search it. Are people talking about it? Can you figure out what the origin was? And then E is emotion. If it triggers a strong emotion, anger, fear, sadness, the odds that was manipulated are higher. And, again, it's not like you can't forward it on or you can't do something with it, but just that moment, like just pause. Like, and
Mhm.
it's like with the browser thing, I call the browser thing when I was trying to intercept them on the way it's called friction. So like,
Mhm.
the website around it's like insertfriction.com. It's just these moments where I'm not trying to control, just like
Mhm.
before you get totally swept along by the algorithm, like, can we just like re-trigger your logical thinking enough, give you a moment to do that before you carry on? And that's the battle that I
Right.
think of this generation of parents these days.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think that awareness of everything is key and there's a balance between creating scared children. And it's tough, but I think the awareness of that and that pause acronym is really good too. Which is you have all of these acronyms and these steps and yeah, I really like how you break everything down into really action forward thinking. Yeah, it helps with a lot of clarity and I think especially for kids these kinds of frameworks are really helpful and yeah, I think your book is amazing. So if
Well,
anyone's
thank you.
listening, yeah, you should definitely grab
one
it.
one thing I'll share with you and the audience, and because you mentioned the action oriented, so like all of last year, you know, I started my Substack, and people can look for me, Mike Whitaker, on Substack. It's like navigating AI transitions with wit, but I started it not because I knew I had a big goal in mind or a destination, but I just needed to start, and like I saw it every day at work. I could hear this disruption from AI coming. The analogy I used was I was on a river in a boat. The scenery was quite nice and the boat was lovely, but you could hear the rapids or the waterfall and you knew the disruption was coming and it felt uncomfortable. Not sure how quickly it was coming. Not sure if it was on the main branch of the river I was on or on a tributary. Like, couldn't tell yet. Didn't know where to go. But just floating with the current didn't feel right because it felt like I was giving up my power, and just going along with it. And so my mantra last year became just paddle. Like, just those two words, just paddle. Like, just take the stroke, do the next thing, create movement. Because once you have movement, you can turn, pivot, you can go faster, you can bring more people into the boat, you can adjust your course and your destination. All of that is really hard when you're stagnant and stationary and not moving. And I think for a lot of people in the AI space, movement's tough. Like, they're maybe dabbling with ChatGPT, but the next step feels intimidating. They don't really know what to say to their kids. They're not sure how to guide. Like, my hope for your audience is like, just go take the first paddle stroke. Like, do the first thing, have the first conversation, ask the first question, do it in a way that there's enough time that you can hear the answer. And one of the things we talk about in the book with the conversation non-negotiables is make space for silence. Like, you don't have to fill the whole conversation with your own thoughts. Ask and listen, or let the conversation go over a couple sessions. And then just like take the next paddle stroke, like do the next thing, go ask what your school's doing. Go, does your teacher have a policy? Does your school have a policy? That led me to testifying at school board meetings. You don't have to start there. Go to a if you're on the PTO, if you're on a school accountability committee, if you're just talking to other parents at your school, like, your first paddle stroke might be to talk to your kid. Your second paddle stroke might be to talk to a friend and say, I had this conversation with my kid and here's why. And then your friend might take that stroke. And that becomes my mantra for this year is ripples of impact, which is, you, whether it's in your local pond or whether it's in a bigger pond, like, the more little stones you drop, every time you do that, you send energy out. And sometimes it's going to ripple beyond where you see and continue to create impact as that energy goes out. Sometimes it'll just dissipate. There won't be much there. And sometimes it's going to bounce back. And somebody, you're going to get something back from somebody that you sent energy out to. And that becomes really powerful and reinforcing. And so, that's my takeaway message to everybody here is, like, take the first stroke, like, just start. If and do so even more so if it's uncomfortable. If it's a space that you're not sure of and are avoiding, just start.
That is a great mic drop finish. No pun intended with your name, but I think, just focus on that action when it comes to navigating this challenging world of AI and everything that we've talked about today, and just focus on paddling and your ripples of impact. It's going to be okay. So thank you. Thank you for all of this. This was so insightful. A lot of things that, none of us have ever heard before. So really appreciate your expertise here.
Thanks. And it's easy for your audience to find me. Like, familythroughlines.com is where my book is. But if you go there, I have a little free PDF, like, I'll send you, that's just like some of the big themes from the book and the key stuff. Just shoot me your email. And, like, if you shoot me an email there, I'll answer. Like, it's not bots. I'm not a big company. Like, I'm a dad. Like, what I care about right now is more people having more conversations about this stuff, because I think it really matters to our kids and it matters now. It's not something that matters 6 months from now or a year from now or 2 years from now. It matters right now. So anything you can do in your community with your family to have the conversations matters tremendously. And it's a very, it's a space you can influence a lot because people are not entrenched. This isn't a space where people are steadfast in their positions and know what they're doing and you're trying to move immovable objects. It's one where people are really yearning for conversation and nuance and guidance and just peers that are also thinking about it. And so you can make a huge impact with as little as one conversation.
So well said. Thank you, Whit.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time
Thank you,
today.
Madeline.
This
I
was
really
an
enjoyed
amazing
it.
conversation. Thank you for tuning in to Girl Dad, the podcast. If you found today's conversation helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow girl dad. I read every review and truly take your words to heart. To close out, remember, your intentional moments make lasting legacies. See you next week.